jelly bean saffron.
Sorry? I need one. There's not a tag for me. Oh, okay. Tell me your name again.
From 12:15. Hi there. 12:15 to it's 2 hours segment.
Am I distracting you or something?
And then we're going to be in
Okay, you're going to the Wurzel trips.
Yes.
The dance?
No.
No? Okay. And the brunch tomorrow?
No.
Sing music and space, and a couple people went to Elbo's house, stopping the traffic.
From outside. I think we got everybody. Okay. Everybody take a deep breath. And welcome yourself to the first ever National Fan Symposium. Fantastic. Thank you everybody on the panel, in the workshops, all of you coming today to discuss all our diverse ideas and interests and experiences. This is truly a historic event. This is not something we've done before. We spend so much of our time and energy expressing ourselves through this beautiful art form in all of its various ways, coming together in all of our little tribes all over the country. This is the first time ever that we have tried to come together as one larger, more powerful, more diverse tribe that contains this beautiful mosaic of all of our lovely differences, and of course the things that we find in common. The theme of this symposium is really quite simple, that with all of our differences there is one common thread that we share, which is the flags and the fans. So today we're going to be talking about the things that we find in common with one another, and then of course exploring the differences that we have and enable ourselves to learn from those differences so that we can incorporate all of those ideas and experiences into this large tribe. So today with our panel, this is how it's going to work. I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'm going to allow each of the panelists to introduce themselves. And in that introduction, we've asked them to answer a few essential questions: who they are and the context of flagging in their lives and how flagging affects their lives in the various ways. And we've also directed a few specific questions for each of the panelists to answer that apply to their area of particular experience or expertise within the community. Once we've had an opportunity to go down the line and the panelists have introduced themselves in that way, then we'll open it up to questions and discussion with the audience so that we have that opportunity to incorporate all of your experiences and contexts as well. Now, of course, we've got a good number of people. We have a couple of hours to do this, so when you're giving your share, try to limit that to a couple of minutes. And that's going to be tricky and hard, and I'm not going to stand here with a stopwatch, but we just want everybody to have an opportunity to express themselves. Now, there are certain costs that were associated with the event today. We're not charging admission. We are going to pass around a basket for donations. We're making a suggested donation of $10. Anything that we are able to get above and beyond the costs of the event today are going directly to the center. Nobody here today is making any money from this event. This is not about that. But we do want to try and cover those out-of-pocket expenses that were incurred just putting this whole thing together. So I'll start this off by introducing myself, and as in the way that the panelists will be doing. My name is Brad Carpenter, and I've first came across flagging 5 years ago, summer of Provincetown. It was 4th of July weekend at this lovely little club that of course everyone packs into at 10 o'clock so that they can get it all in before everything breaks up at 1 in the morning. And I was watching some of the beautiful flaggers on stage, and I'd admired flagging for a long time, but hadn't had the courage yet to go up to anybody. And finally, when at 1 o'clock came and it all came apart, I went up to one of the flaggers and said, "It's really beautiful. How do you do that?" And he put the flag in my hand and showed me where to hold it. And I did that first thing that we all do, which is to just make that motion, and I felt the fabric unfurl in my hand. And it was the most glorious experience. There was just this sense of, this feels really great. There's some expansion of my consciousness and awareness when I do this movement. And there's something else that's sort of hard to define. And of course, it was something that I was just hooked on immediately. But because of the way that I met this person, and of course everything broke up from there, and I really didn't get to see him again. I didn't have the opportunity to really have a flag daddy. It just was one of those things that I was itching to do, and I found a way to get a hold of some flags. And I'm like, where do you get them? That's the first thing. Was like, where do you get them? And nobody really was able to answer that. I found some website. I ordered some flags, which I had later referred to as Kmart flags, because they were just kind of hastily put together, but it was something. And a number of months later, I finally met George Yagatic, who I consider my flag daddy. And he saw me flagging the one move that I could do at a pool party and came up to me, and we started having the discussions, and I began to learn and progress from there. And flagging as a context for me is something that's always offered me the opportunity for unbridled expression. I always felt that my beam would just open up and be full on, and it was like, here I am, and I would just experience myself as part of this greater something. This greater something that's the community that we all are a part of, but this greater energy that we're all connected to it as well. And the flags were a significant part of that. In my daily life, I produce television. I'm the post-production producer for Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. It's kind of great that in my daily life, there's something that so parallels what I feel flagging is about. In the show, we're all about trying to help people discover who they are and express themselves more fully as who they are, not change them into some prototype that we decided is the right or correct way to dress or groom yourself or eat, but to see who their person is and who their style is and have that expressed. And to me, that's what I feel flagging does. It takes whatever your essence is and helps it to emerge in a truly beautiful nature. So in talking about being a part of this community, I think one of the general questions that we'll have answered with the panelists as they discuss themselves and their own context of all of this is simply, what does it mean to be a community? What does that word mean for us? And so I'm going to now hand this over to our first panelist, David Gosman, so he can discuss all of these things and let you know a little bit more about him and what flagging means to him. David?
Good morning. I don't know, can everyone hear me without this? Okay. coming out to this first symposium, and good morning. I know it's really early. Michael has set coffee and snacks up in the back. Don't let there be a mad rush right now, but just know that there's some coffee back there. We are running just a little bit behind, but no big deal, guys. It's all going to work out just great. As you can see on my name tag, I'm officially a community organizer. Now, I'm a little bit, I don't know, that doesn't set real well with me because it's a really new title for me. My journey has been very mixed along the way. I started flagging 5 or 6 years ago, again with George, and I did a lot of my stuff on my own. I flagged by myself at clubs, by myself, and usually without other flaggers around. It was only in places like P-Town or New Orleans that I would find other flaggers, but generally I was on my own. And I did that for several years. And then I looked back up with George's class again, and George had built up a great little family at that time. And I was welcomed immediately in a way that connected with me that I hadn't felt before. And as I continued going to the classes, George suggested that I do a gay pride performance with him. And for me, I thought, oh my gosh, I can't perform like that. You know, because people who know me will tell you I'm not the best at choreography and remembering steps or even trying to, I mean, he had to explain what a plie was to me. He just told me to bend my knee. Okay. To make a long story short, that performance, it was in Brooklyn Pride, changed my life completely. I felt some confidence in my flagging ability, in my dancing ability, also in the way I perceived others. And I believe I was more open to being a part of a community. And from there it just kind of grew. It was just a very profound change. So when I was given this opportunity to be a part of the symposium, I was able to say yes. If this had happened a year ago, I wouldn't have done any of this. I wouldn't have been able to. I just emotionally would not have been in that place where I could have done this. So I was very grateful that I was in a place where I could accept this challenge. And it's been very rewarding. And at the same time, it's been rewarding in a couple of different ways. And one of those is that in trying to organize things for groups of flaggers to do, I have to recognize my own journey and where I came from, where sometimes when I first started off, it was just about making patterns with flags and having fun. And that's all it was, just having fun. Now I still like to have fun, but it grew into so much more. So in trying to organize things for flaggers to do, I have to recognize that as well. So I try and provide instruction for people just coming in, and then providing more, a sense of family, a sense of community, making a connection, sometimes a spiritual connection. So it's really evolved for me, and for me that's the rewarding part of this even. This was a great opportunity for me, and like Brad said, no one's making money from this, but I sure reaped a lot of rewards from doing this. So I'm very grateful that I had this opportunity.
My name is George Jagsik, and I guess what I heard David say is about being uncomfortable about the title because it's new, but it certainly is deserved, and you've really made this happen for so many people, and I'm just thankful for that. So you earned it. It's great. Get used to it, honey. I get nervous speaking in front of groups. If it's not cracking a whip and making people kick their legs higher.
What do you mean by that?
Not empty. But flagging to me, the one thing that has kept me going through all the ups and downs, through the pain, the difficulties, my own struggles, with thinking, oh, this is silly, people don't like this, people don't like me, why am I doing this, has been a core feeling that there's something here, that there's something that when I flag, that is good. And through everything else, I just keep going back to that belief, that faith, if you will, that has made me continue on through a lot of struggle. And in coming together as a community today, you know, one of the things that I want to put out there is, you know, in a lot of ways, I have to put myself out there. I've had people to support me. Brad Carpenter with Access Dance. Access Dance has been an amazing project. Has been it hasn't lived up to my expectations, and it's been more than I ever imagined. And it continues to grow. And I think, like what David talked about, is that it's been a growing experience, and I don't think any growing experience is all good. And I've really, really taken so much from that. I think Access Dance and this coming together as a performance company has taught me so many things that I've never even imagined. It's like, what does it mean to move together? I started flagging a little over 10 years ago in California, and it was like many of us. You know, I saw a hot guy, and I said, "Wow, that's fabulous!" And you know, just kind of went from there. And I was lucky enough to have a background in dance, where I had some technique and structure and kind of framework to hang this on. And as I began to fall in love with this, I used that framework of what I had, that knowledge of learning movement, and began to, you know, the clubs and, you know, giving the enjoyment to other people and seeing the expression on their faces and getting that attention and loving that. Oh my God. So hey, let's do it as a group. Let's get a couple people together and you know, pull costumes and, you know, do crazy stuff. And that grew, and that was the next step. And from there, there was a struggle as to, it came from the clubs. We were doing this in the clubs. Where do we go next, and how do we do that next step? And that was a big growing process for me, because that next step was looking at it seriously. And again, I went back to my faith, and I said, there's something good here. And I was curious, and I really wanted to know why it felt so good when I did this. Why, what was happening? What was going, why was I so charged about this whole experience? That led me into a reassessment of who I was, and it led me to dance therapy, which I last year recently graduated from that schooling, and through that whole process, you know, I kept reflecting back on flagging and looking at flagging, and in different classes looking at movement analysis and looking at these very specific and detailed and in-depth concepts about flagging. It was fascinating. It was just, it showed me so much, not only about this art form, but about myself and defining who I wanted to, what I wanted to be, and learning about myself. So in coming out of that, I felt a little bit more settled in where I wanted to go. I'm currently working as a working dance therapist, but Access Dance continues as well, and it's an amazing balance because the performance quality and working with people and continuing to work together as a group is tremendously rewarding, exciting. It's tapping into that creative essence that I need, and that energizes me, and that makes me go on another day. My work and studies in dance therapy has really grounded me, and I think given me so much to bring back to this community. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, and I just want to thank everybody here for taking the time to come together and to allow yourself just being here and willing to listen to what everybody here in this room has to say. So thank you.
I'm going to use this as backup. So I feel my heart beating, and I think that's for everybody, all of my peers that I sit in front of. So thank you all for being here to allow us to speak. I'm here to talk about the creativeness behind tie-dyeing a set of flags, but who I am. I learned actually watching George practice at a white party 8 or 9 years ago, something like that. That's when I learned that I wanted to do this. My first time to see fanning was my first time ever into a gay club, and there was somebody spinning fans in a corner, dark corner of the club, and I thought, that man is definitely queen, and I want to know who to do And who would have thought that 10 years later I would be wanting to express myself through dance, just like that man was doing, and that prejudgment that I had, it was repelling to me, but at the same time it was alluring for some reason. And I found that again watching George. A few months later, I begged a friend of a friend of a friend to think about giving me a set of flags, who was a friend of George, Paul. Yeah. And
that was cute.
and so we're connected in that way. I don't know that you ever knew that, but how many people actually have made a set of flags or fans? Have you made your own? So I'm preaching to the choir. How many of you had made your own first set? Or how many of you, you made your own first set, got an instruction? How many of you went to Kmart? or bought them? Okay. Well, okay, and then how many of you were given a set just by chance? So, we have a good variety of people here. The thing is, no matter where you come into the spectrum, as soon as you start spinning, as soon as you start experiencing the creativity that's in the flags, you're hooked. It's all the same. It doesn't matter where your ground is. As soon as you start spinning, we all come up to the same area, which is a chance, as George said, to experience your creative essence, to create within the dance and be part of the now, which Christian, I'm sure, will talk much more about. So, as far as creating flags, those of you that raised your hands and said that you've made your own first set of flags, I'm undoubtedly sure that you've made more, or fans, and that you've shared those with people. And Larry, I'm sure, is down here. Where is Larry? Larry's children are known far and wide. I mean, everybody recognizes his work or the things that he's created and the people that he's spawned on to create that copy him or mimic him. And I kind of am holding another area when it comes to tie-dye. If you've ever heard Dino's name, Dino was one of the first people that started tie-dyeing flags with the colors, the bright colors that you see today. Now, to give Dino credit, he asked me to mention the fact that the flags that inspired him, Canada gave him, they were from an old set of yellow pink and green dyes. Brit used to make a pink and a green dye, and a yellow. And we're pretty sure that those were the dyes that were used, and they were given to him as a present in a party in Miami. And there were 2 of them, and they flagged with him for a year and a half before somebody turned on a set of black lights in a club. So he had gotten into the energy, and then the black lights just made that become a transcendental experience if you listen to him, and that sent him searching. I went to San Francisco to be part of the flagging in the park. It was held by a group of men. They called themselves the Tribe. So that group of men is something I also want to talk about briefly, because they were a group of lovers. They were a group of men that were intimately involved with one another, and they would travel from coast to coast and in between. And being amongst them was a very safe place, which is something that we as flaggers recognize. There's a oneness about being with yourself, and you can sense that in other flaggers. And it was a very safe place for people to come in and pick up flagging. So, hold that again. I met Dino, and the thing that attracted me to him, his wit, his smile, his charm, and his flags. He won me over with his flags, and I've been tie-dyeing ever since. I made flags. I sewed them. I walked with my little black light into fabric stores looking for just the right flag. And I love to give flags. You know, lame was my thing before I met Dino. And then once I met Dino, it was silk, and it's been silk ever since. And by making a set of silk, and having made it hundreds, if still in the hundreds at this point, and being able to have that, if you want to call it a commodity, but have that resource to be able to give a set of flags feels so good. And when you're giving a piece of yourself, something that you created, it's even more wonderful. So Larry, I'm sure, feels that, and I'm sure many of you do. This is a piece of yourself that you're giving, and you're entrusting it, and you know that it's going to change somebody's life. So I just want to bring that energy in. How we change others' lives, how our lives have been changed by the creation around us. So, I'll stop there.
So good morning, my name is Christian de la Huerta. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here today from San Francisco. I'm relatively new to flagging. I've been flagging for about 3 years. I started flagging through my partner, Marcus Thorndike. So he's my flag daddy, and then my flag granddaddy is Michael Sigmund, and Candida is actually my great-grandmother in that genealogy. Been asked to speak a little bit about flagging within a spiritual context, and I want to first of all address that word spiritual, because it's a word that is controversial, brings people's stuff up, tragically, because we tend to confuse it with religion, with organized religion. And you know, it's no surprise. It's no surprise that people in the LGBT community especially react to anything that smacks of religion or spirituality, given the treatment that we have received and continue to receive at the hands of most religions. But what's sad about that, what's tragic about that, what's ironic about that is that before the patriarchal cultures of religions came about, people that we today call LGBT, queer, whatever we call ourselves, we're not only spiritually inclined, but we're actually honored and revered and respected for the roles of spiritual service and leadership and community enrichment that we play in cultures all over this planet. You name the continent and we were there, fulfilling some kind of spiritual roles and functions. So I want to, I'll come back to you. Let me just speak for a few minutes, and then we can talk about that more. There's also a story that I wanted to share with you to kind of help explain what I mean by flagging as a spiritual or meditative practice. There's a story, how many of you have heard of Rumi, the Sufi poet? An incredible poet from the Sufi tradition, and so from, I guess, the 1300s or so. Rumi, according to some experts, was considered to be gay. His poetry is very, very homoerotic, although some people say that it wasn't necessarily physical. But who knows? I mean, who knows whether he and his teacher Shams actually got it on or not. The poetry certainly seems to indicate to me, anyway, that it was. So Rumi was this famous scholar and teacher and worked at the universities, wherever he taught in the Middle East. And then he met this wild, crazy man who was just a kind of a wandering beggar, practically, in the desert, whose name was Shams. And he became his teacher and lover, according to some people. And so then, and so that Rumi's life became completely captivated by this person. And Shams was actually the source of inspiration for most of his poetry. So anyway, his students and family, Rumi's students, got jealous of their relationship, and they killed him. They had him murdered. And so it was, and in its unspeakable pain, Rumi began to kind of whirl around this pole. And out of that whirling motion, the whirling dervishes, if you know what those are, were born. He was the founder of the whirling dervishes. And out of that whirling motion, his unspeakable pain was transmuted into ecstasy. And so to me, flaggers are like modern day whirling dervishes. For me, it's very difficult to be flagging and to be stuck in my mind. And to be, either projecting into the future or fantasizing and rehashing about the past. It's like, you've got to be in the present, you've got to be in the now, as Xavier was talking about. And before I knew spiritual practices like breathwork or meditation, the only time in my life where I had those moments of like no mind, or that, that constantly, the little mind that drives us crazy all day long every day, just talking about whatever crap it talks about and thinks about. The only moments that I have of that mind stopping was in sex. It was during sex where I was just in the moment, and there wasn't that constant crap. And the next experience I had of that was flagging. So for me, flagging is a meditative practice. It is a meditative and spiritual art. One of the how many of you saw the movie Under the Tuscan Sun? Remember the beautiful goddess character that was based on the Fellini movie, and how she spoke about how Fellini had told her that she should learn how to live spiritually. And so for me, that's another, when I think Brad was talking about flagging teaches him to expand the way that he thinks about himself. That, to me, that's what that means, and that's why, to me, it is also the spiritual practice, because it forces me to think in dimensions that I had never thought about before. It balances my left and my right side, and I have to relate, in all directions. So to me, it is about living spiritually, and I love that concept. And as several of people who already spoke before were saying, flagging is about self-expression. It's about expressing that essence, that beauty that's inside each one of us. And to me, that is also the spiritual function. And one more thing that I'll say about that, one of the things that I did in my book, Coming Out Spiritually, is synthesize and name some spiritual roles or archetypes that we have played, that poor people have played throughout history. One of them is the keeper of beauty, creators and keepers of beauty. We all know that we have brought more beauty and color and texture and life and music and celebration into this world in numbers that far exceed our proportions to the overall population. And to me, flagging is about beauty. And to me, that is also, anybody who's bringing beauty into this world, in my perception, is fulfilling a spiritual role. So I think I'll stop for now.
Hi everybody, my name's Warren Gluck. 30 years ago this week, I started lugging cases of 45s to nightclubs on Long Island. Called myself a DJ, got paid $20 a night. I remember my father saying to me, "You'll have to get a job." Here we go, 30 years later, and it's my profession, and who knew? Through the years, of course, musical styles have changed, and venues have changed. And I remember my first experience seeing any kind of flagging or fanning. It was primarily fanning was at the St. here in New York, and a little bit at the Ice Palace on Fire Island, and thinking how beautiful it was. And I always fancied myself to play the prettier style of music, so flaggers and fanners were attracted to that kind of music as I was. And it kind of died down a little bit, and then I remember playing out in San Francisco in the 90s. And it's funny how we're all connected one way or another. I saw this man, Xavier, flagging, and I came back to New York saying, I just saw the most fantastic, beautiful flags I've ever seen in my life. This guy, Xavier, was just wonderful, and I'm just talking about it everywhere. So we're all connected one way or another. And I always wanted to flag in the back of my mind somewhere, just, you know, would pick them up, not get anywhere with them, and frustrated, put them down. Finally, there came that time in 2001. I'll never forget, it was the night of the Pines Party 2001, and my flag daddy, Bobby Brady, sitting right here. After I finished my set, we were one of the tents, and I don't know, everything clicked, and I just stopped with that death grip on the fabric. Everybody knows that death grip. All of a sudden I realized you could just hold it with 2 or 3 fingers, and he just said, "You're doing it." And I was doing it, and it was just so exciting. And the big turning point in my flagging life came a few months later at the Red Party that year in Columbus. And I wasn't playing that night at the Red Party, I played the night before. And I was going to the Red Party as a flagger. And I was so nervous. Going over there in the band, and I just, you know, the party opened and we were going to go out on the stage, and I said, I can't do this, I can't do this. Like, go! Pushing me right out to the front of the stage. And there I was doing it, and people were taking my picture, and I was so happy, and it was the most freeing moment of my life. I mean, I've played for thousands and thousands of people around the whole country and the world, but that night I'll remember most. It's probably the happiest moment of my whole life. And through flagging, I have just come to know so many wonderful, wonderful people, and feel so much a part of such a great community. And it's indeed my honor to play music for all the flaggers and fanners. And when I'm playing a party, my favorite thing is when the flaggers and fanners will start the party after me. Because a lot of times if we have a private party, somebody will do a blessing, Barbara will help me out with that, and a prayer circle. And then everything will start with the fanning and flagging. And it's just terrific. And when I'm playing, I just wish I could flag and play music at the same time. Occasionally I'll do it in the DJ booth. Lots of times if I'm on a gig somewhere else in the country, I'll just get back to my hotel room, put a set of headphones on, so I don't disturb anybody and flag for a while before I go to sleep. So it's just brought something to me that I never knew could be so fulfilling. You know, if I'm out at a party and I don't have anything in my hands, I feel like I'm naked. And I can still feel my hands moving. And I'm not the greatest flagger in any means, but I think because I know the music, I have a way of interpreting style, and it's just fun, and it's just brought it all full circle for me, and it's just such an honor to be here with everybody. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Randy Bettis. I'm also a DJ here in the city. And my experience with flagging is that I made a conscious choice at one point back during the Red Party in 2000 when I was in a hotel room with a bunch of people who were flagging. Somebody handed me some flags. I'm like, oh yeah. And as I started, I thought, you know what? I don't want to. Because, and the reason for that is, I'm an overachiever to some degree. And once I start something, it's like, I can't let it go. And I thought, you know what, I don't need to learn something new to appreciate it. And what I want to do now is be able to watch others and enjoy it, enjoy watching how they interpret it, and not get so into my head. And I actually love that I made that decision, because now I can sit and watch people for hours and really love it, and not feel like I have to be doing it, which is an odd thing for me. Because usually I take over. And the very first person I ever saw do it, and I don't know her name, I wish I did. I've never seen her since this summer on Fire Island. It was a young little lesbian girl who used to stand back in a corner. She was never presentational, and she would fan very, very slowly, but you could tell it was all a spiritual experience for her. And I probably kneeled next to her for almost 2 hours that night. And that for me was when I saw how a spiritual thing it was for her. And she drew me into it, which again is another reason why I decided that I wanted to be a fan of and not so much of a participant. And I think what Flaggers have done for the club community, and now I'm getting to experience this in a lot more towns, is that the beauty they bring to the event is, you know, undeniable for one. But to see Flaggers start or fanners, and each one somebody picks it up and somebody else gets added on, and you just feel such a swelling of love and spirituality at some point within the night. In clubs before, that didn't necessarily happen for me as a DJ. The one thing I loved about clubs is that people felt like they didn't need to have somebody else around them to experience themselves physically. But there was never that sense of a dancer, one dancer starting and then somebody would join him and somebody would join him. It doesn't happen in dance, but with flagging it does. And that's why when George talks about the community, I think that's why it's continuing to grow, because people really, whether they're speaking or not, they're understanding what the other person is experiencing. And I don't think I would want to do an event without them, to be honest with you. Because if the color and the joy and the spirituality that they bring to an event isn't there, at this point I'm spoiled. You know, it kind of makes me feel like, oh, it's fun, wasn't it? But so I want to thank you all for giving me that joy.
And thank you, George and Brad and David and Wolfgang and Joe for making this happen and to make it look like it was effortless. That means you put a huge effort in. So thank you very much. I wasn't sure how I was going to start out from my unique perspective here. So I have to say that growing up, I always figured when people asked me who I was, I had to check the box marked other. I know that sometimes it's just a matter of taking down that velvet rope for a minute. Sometimes it just takes a second of having them in their hands, and they go, oh, okay, thank you. And then other times, well, some of you are here. So, I've also, around the same time I started fanning, I also started becoming a practicing witch. And if I keep practicing, I'll get it right. But I realized that the fans were a magical tool. Throughout my life, the most attractive part of the fairy tale was the wand, or the tools that were being used. And I wasn't sure what that was about until I started actually having a wand in my hand. And then I had a fan in my hand, and I realized, oh, this is a wand. So I realized immediately that they're used for conducting energy, or can be, and that everybody pretty much does that, whether they acknowledge it or not. You do it on some level, or every level as you keep doing it. And it has been a wonderful experience, blessing spaces with Warren before parties. Last Black Party before last, my best friend fanned while I saged, and we cleaned Roseland up for the party. That's been something I've been doing for the last 10 years or so. It was nice to have reinforcements. Thank you. And I guess that's pretty much it, except that I think that it's incumbent on all of us to share this with others and make sure that no one ever feels like they're on the other side of the velvet rope. Thank you.
One of my titles, along with fan up there, is historian, which is a nice way of saying I'm old. Probably 27, 28 years ago, I was at a large bathhouse in Chicago that had a dance floor and a disc jockey. I was there with a boyfriend, and we were feeling good, feeling no pain. Let's see, we were high. Higher than God. And I left the room for a while. I was walking around, walked by the dance floor, and there were 3 guys out there had these big pieces of fabric, and they were doing things, and I went in and sat. And I guess about 45 minutes later, my boyfriend came out and brought me back to earth. Time was of no essence then. I disappeared right into their fans. They were fans then, we did not flag. I went up to one and talked to him and looked at him, went home, tried to remember what I saw, talked about. It wasn't too clear, I don't know why. So I created my own, did my own style. And I was the only one, I'm from Cleveland. I was the only one in Cleveland doing it. And I got a few people who wanted to learn, and we would all make the fans the way I had figured out to make them, which was different than anybody else's. And I guess then about 10 years ago, I ran into the other legend. The other legend meaning that I am very humbled and honored to be on a platform with many legends up here. In Cleveland came this woman named Canada. And she taught me to flag. I had never done that before. She gave me my first set of flags. So I didn't make my first set of fans. Made many since. And I've made many flags since. So I guess I kind of consider myself like what used to be the prima ballerina. Once you get so old, you stop dancing and you start teaching. So I've been teaching, and one of the methods I use of teaching is my video camera. You can stand in front of a mirror and you can see what you look like while you're concentrating on the mirror. But when you're dancing and you cross over, and I hope you all have been able to cross over, where you get into what you're doing, It's a wonderful picture from in there. A lot of people have said, oh, that's so pretty, and I would say to them, you should see it from the inside. And because there is a completely different picture from the inside. But I video these people when they don't know it. And then when they take a break, I show them what they look like, and their mouths drop open, and that's me. I said, yeah, that's you from the outside. And you get the two different pictures, and I feel that's a good way of teaching people. I've just been so honored through my almost 3 decades, the family that I've come up with, many people that I've met along the way, and we've become very close friends. Tom and Scott, Jack, Warren, I met Xavier years ago at Cherries, Larry. There's just so many of them from all over the world, actually. And it's just such an honor because it's such a close family. I can remember one of the first parties in Cleveland, this beautiful young body was flagging, and I was watching him, and he only had one set, so I went up. A while later, I said, here, try these. No one's ever done that. Where he came from, you don't touch each other's. And he flung them for a while, and took another set up, and he was just in shock that anyone would share. That's all I knew was sharing. All I ask is you ask first. I've seen too many people go up and start digging without asking. And sometimes you don't get back what you dug for. But it's been a wonderful experience for me. I am very honored and humbled to be up here. That I knew from White 2000. Yep. I've got videos of many people here, including your wedding. It cost you. But I guess that's about it. I'm the old one. Thank you.
Nervous as hell because I'm not used to speaking to people in front of their face, just on the telephone. Anyway, I got into flagging actually, obviously maybe 7 years ago. And it wasn't a black party, it was my other half. I met him at black party. He went to Octagon, and I was supposed to go with him if we found a scalper to get a ticket to get in there. That was a time when, you couldn't get in there, into Susan's parties. I couldn't get in. So I went back home. Luckily, he lived in Philadelphia, so we both met each other. And that night, he showed me these beautiful American flags that were made by, I think, Christopher Scott, something like that. And Ted's fond of that, Mr. Falcon Pornstar. But no, he's a beautiful person, I should say. But anyway, he introduced me to that, and I started playing, okay, I'm having fun. And he's sitting there trying to give me a lesson. I'm like, okay, go away. I have to do it my way. And it took me a long time. I needed a license to flag because, believe me, I was bad. That same year, we went to the summer party, and, well, I kind of skipped over the sewing thing. I actually, we had our second set of flags made by a dry cleaner. Okay. And, well, I haven't sewn in 10 years, so. And I didn't like them. They were ugly green flags. And the other ones were beige things. After that, I said to him, no, I can sew. Let's go get a sewing machine. So we bought, this cheap $200 sewing machine. And Lord knows I got my money's worth out of that thing. And I replaced a lot of motors on it too. But anyway, after that, the Summer Gay Pride thing, I came to the party with 60 flags. I made 10 sets for my friend Tori. I can't remember his last name. And I don't know how many I made for other people. They were all plain flags. I scoured through all over New York, all over the shops. My other half will not go with me to a fabric store anymore. No way. So I had to turn everything over. And I just got tired of the plain fabrics or the stupid designs. You know, you find a fabulous design, but it doesn't pop, just a white background pops. Or, you know, you're lucky if you find something fluorescent, but, you know, it's only two-dimensional kind of. So that's when I started saying to myself, oh, let's start putting flags together. And that's what started me from there. Now, as far as selling goes, I was kind of pushed into that situation. I would say it wasn't that long after that. I would say sometime in October. And I kept having people ask me. So finally I said, here, you can have one. And it just started from there. I have to say thank you, everybody, for supporting me. Okay, because if you didn't support me, I wouldn't be able to go as far as I have. My creativity, or whatever you want to call it. I'm sorry, I'm stuttering because I'm still nervous.
The work is done.
Oh, you're welcome.
Some other issues to talk about. So now this is the point where we're open up for you guys to describe an experience or ask a question to the panelists. We'll try to, raise your hand, call on you kind of thing, just so we can let everybody have an opportunity to speak. One of the general questions, or just things to, really ask you guys is, there's a lot of talking about being seen. Randy, chose to really have his experience through watching other flaggers. John talks about the difference in how you feel when you're flagging versus, well, here's a videotape of how you look when you flag and see it from that side. And Barbara, you talked about this preconceived notion of how we should look. So the general question I would throw out to you at this point here is, what does it mean to be seen? What does that mean actually to you? And does flagging help that, or are there ways that flagging hurts that in terms of how we're perceived? Anybody have thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, can you also introduce yourself before you speak?
Yeah, actually, exactly.
My name is Teddy Moore, and I'm actually a fan dancer, and I started fanning in October of 1972. So I've been doing it kind of a long time. I see it more as a very spiritual thing. I never did it to be seen. I more did it to, as a spiritual thing of being post-Stonewall, coming out. It was my liberation. It was my gay thing, because it was so gay to me at the time that this wasn't anything straight people did. And they weren't in places where I was doing this. And to me, it was this feeling of finally being who I was, and be able to stand up there and do what I was doing because it was me, and it was representative of what I was feeling. And it was also giving back to the DJs who I adored. To me, it was entertaining them and delighting people, and the people that were in the room who were to me, it was about camaraderie. So I did it more for my own inner self and not that like, look at me. No, 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 don't look at me, because I was very shy. And I know it wasn't a shy thing to do, to stand up there, but a lot of things went through my head when I did it. So I don't, to me, it was ever to be seen. I think it was more about to shout out who I was finally and able to be who I